I'm delighted to introduce Mona Chiriac, who's our speaker for this session. Mona graduated in Geography and English Language and Literature in IGCSE in Romania, and has a Master's in Leading Teaching and Learning from the University of Cambridge in the Faculty of Education. She's been involved in teacher training and professional development for over 12 years and is currently pursuing her PhD in researching geographies of education, taking a very keen interest on how education differs in the world, both in terms of curriculum and teaching and learning strategies. Since 2015, Mona has been working as a teacher trainer for Cambridge International, and she's trained teachers in global perspectives, active learning methodology and assessment for learning in humanities and social sciences, and she's done those courses in countries around the world. This afternoon, Mona, along with other key topics for high school students, will look at how Cambridge IGCSE Global Perspectives develops learners' critical view of the world around them by placing importance on analysing and interrogating the status quo from different perspectives. So that's a local, regional, national, and international perspective. Without further ado, I'm delighted to hand over to Mona to begin her workshop. Thank you, Mona.
Thank you very much. I read some of the comments. It seems that there's a problem with some gray boxes. So I'm going to start share screening again, and hopefully if there are still problems, please do let us know. Thank you for letting us know up until now. So what we're trying to do today is, as Joe has so kindly mentioned, I am going to lead the final session for you today, and it is on understanding the whole purpose of education in the idea of understanding also what Global Perspectives has to offer. So I'm going to share again, and please let me know if everything is fine this time.
Mona, I'll just let you know that there's a grey line at the top of the page, but it's not covering any of the text.
Is this better?
It's moving around the screen now.
Okay, let me just try one more time. I'm really sorry. I really don't know why this is about.
Yeah, it was working perfectly yesterday.
Yeah, everything was fine. Let's see. Okay, maybe this time. This one, share. New share this one, and start. Is this better now?
That's definitely better. There's still a line that
I don't know why that is, but if it doesn't, if it's not too uncomfortable, then we will carry on without it. I'm really not sure why that is. So
yeah, I think we can manage.
Yeah. Okay. The whole session of today is trying to see global perspectives, but this time at the IGCSE level. So we're talking about learners 14 to 16 years old. And we're trying to look at not only the content, structure, and the assessment objectives of the syllabus, but also how the subject is implemented. So therefore, the various teaching and learning approaches and strategies used for global perspectives. And we're going to do this by trying to cover our discourse into understanding the reason for educating our young. What is it all for? Why do we educate our young? So before we get started with this, I'm very curious about your own purpose for coming here. And I know and I appreciate and I thank very much for those of you who keep coming back to these sessions. I've recognized names. So please go to menti.com and use this code. And in using this code, you do not need a password. You do not need login details, just this code. And in using this code, try and write down why did you join the session? What was your scope for joining us? And I'm going to, if you can't access the menti.com, then I wonder maybe if you can write to us in the chat. And in this way, then I can also check and I could,
excuse me, Mona, just to let you know that there's a grey box in the middle, but I've put the code into the chat box with Menti.
Okay, let's try a new share. Hello.
Hi, I'm here. Hi, Mona.
She's frozen, Josephine, just to say we're here too.
And okay.
I think it may be some issue during sharing two screens, so she may need to share just one screen.
Okay, okay. I wonder if I'll try to let her know.
First problem is the intellect problem, isn't it? I hope we can get her back. So hopefully she's logging on again. There we go. Yeah.
Well, do forgive us for this technical hitch at the moment, but I'm sure Mona's connecting again and we'll get up and running again. Just a minute or two of patience.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
You know, I promise you, it will be the best session ever because nothing like this has ever happened. I'm really sorry. I have no idea what happened. So, moving on. So what we want to do is to try and look and see where we are. So have people already logged into Mentimeter and trying to, let's see. So that is the present, and there you go. I do apologize, I don't know what happened. So could you tell us why did you attend this session? Can we try now? Because I have just made it accessible. So Angela, I'm sorry, and Fabiola, and Philip as well. Angela, yes. I'm teaching global goals 2030. Oh, so is that the, Christina Sperotto, is that the Agenda 2030 that you're teaching? If you could let me know by dropping a message, because it's really interesting. Oh, exactly, the 2030 agenda, that's very interesting. Is it still not working? Please, if it doesn't work, write to us in the, to find out more, there you go, it does work. To find out more about global perspectives, oh, there it is. It takes a little while to, I'm teaching IGCSE geography, very interesting, so do I. Curious about the topic, thank you. Teaching at Cambridge School, and we are thinking of offering global perspectives. That's very good, yes. I'm hoping to convince you that you should by the end of today. Curiosity and possible new teaching opportunities. I'm hoping to be addressing that too. Ilaria, curious as well. To put together a more interesting answer than mine. To answer more about its teaching perspectives, very interesting. Teaching geography IGCSE, yes. To post questions and comments, please write insert your code to learn more. Yes, we will try and learn more. So teaching the Agenda 2030, I don't know if this is the same person or not, if it's still Christina. A lot of people answering. I would start to use IGCSE. Okay, very good, very interesting. Oh, thinking again of taking a global perspective to satisfy the educational needs. Yes, you'd like your school to become a Cambridge school. Well, I hope it does. Educazione civica, it's not the first time that this appeared in our discussions throughout these 3 days. To learn more, teach civics, very good. Yes, I've been dealing with some of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, 169 indicators, yes, yes, a lot of them. curiosity about becoming a Cambridge school. So I hope that we will be able to share with you some of the personal development, says Michaela, I think. Yes, very interesting. So what we will do today is we're going to try and answer, you're a teacher, hopefully of a global perspective. If not, we will try and see if we can make you a teacher of global perspective. So let me just tell you, those of you interested about Cambridge schools, let me just tell you a little bit about what this is about and what Cambridge schools are all about, just very briefly, and I'm sure you'll find from my colleagues a lot more information. Our approach to learning, the Cambridge pathway, is to offer sound education to learners from as young as 5 years old all the way to 19 years old. So the whole spectrum of school education. So it offers a primary curriculum, it offers a lower secondary, an upper secondary, 14 to 16, which we will be talking today about, and an advanced program for access to universities at A levels. As we move progressively from lower school all the way to upper school, you will see that we have far more subjects that we offer. At IGCSE, if you see here the orange sign here, we offer over 70 different subjects. We offer O-level as well and ICE certificates. So there's a very wide choice of subjects for schools to choose from, and then continue to A-level. And these subjects, so as I see global perspectives, you see here for primary, and it continues at lower secondary, it continues at upper secondary, and it continues at A-level. So we go across the board with this, and the understanding of becoming a Cambridge school. And I study, as Joe said, I study curriculum design, and I do this in order to understand what we want out of our graduates. Because if I want to understand what education stands for, either in a school or in an educational system, I'm looking at their mission statement and I'm looking at their outcomes. What do they want at the end of it? And working then backwards, what they want, the outcome, dictates their content and dictates their measures of applying their content, of implementing the content, and it dictates their assessments. So what does Cambridge want? If you are a Cambridge learner, what do we want you to become? Well, in Cambridge education approach, we want our learners to be responsible. We want them to be self-directed in their learnings and to be self-motivated, to continue to learn. So it's a student who takes responsibility, and I move there to responsible, yes, to show academic integrity. We want them to be innovative. And in being innovative, we want them to try and think outside the box, in trying to be critical thinkers and not just look in their own courtyard, but look abroad, look across, see globally. Because solutions now need to not only be local, and we need to think globally. We're also looking for them to be confident, because they gain very strong knowledge, specific scientific knowledge. So our curriculum, be it geography or history or mathematics or sciences, they're grounded in very strong research. So we want them to be confident with the knowledge that they've gained, because it is based in the latest research. And this knowledge should allow them to then confidently discern different kinds of information and be smart consumers of information. We want them not to be passive receivers of information. We want them to be actively engaged in their learning. We want them to have a say, and I'll be talking a little bit more about that in a minute. And we want them to reflect, because ultimately, without reflection, you can't really change and modify your own behavior and that of the others, or your own actions, unless you sit back and you reflect on the impact that your own thoughts, your own behavior, and your own actions have had on yourself and on the people around you, and how this impacts people wider and possibly to locally and global community. So roughly, this is what we're looking for in a Cambridge graduate. And equally, you won't be surprised to find out that this is exactly what we're looking for in teachers who teach Cambridge approach. So our teachers, the Cambridge teachers, have the same characteristics, and we're looking into them to having the same characteristics. So if we then move on to see how does this fit, I think it is very important to just take a moment to reflect on what is specific about our world nowadays, because it's different from when I went to school, and I'm not that old. It is different from when you went to school, and it's right that it is. And I think one of the things that we need to take into consideration is the interdependencies. Now, more than ever, we are caught in this very complex web of interrelations across very vast spaces. It's no longer small spaces. So what happens half a world away is impacting on our lives, and this pandemic is proof of that. Everything is interconnected in a web of dependencies with very complex demographics. In the past, when I grew up, demographies were not that heterogeneous. They were very homogeneous societies when we grew up. And now demographies are very different. And we need to consider this as a characteristic of our world. Diversity is a word that characterizes our world today. And you won't be surprised that those of you who teach IGCSE geography, diversity is one of the key geographical concepts that we look at. So we need to develop global competencies in our learners, because this is what will help them face the world. And global competencies, is defined by Veronica Bois-Mansilla in 2011, is the capacity, and not just the capacity, but the disposition to understand and to act on issues of global significance. So it is very important that we also don't ignore the digital revolution that happens with us and the impact that it had on our lives. And equally, not to ignore the fact that nowadays, more than ever, we live in a world where we look for self-understanding. We study our own brain, we study our own behaviors and trying to see how we learn, and we're trying to see how we react, how humans react. So it's very much, we also turn the magnifying glass upon ourselves to look at this. All of this, therefore, shows us the education is not just anything that we want it to be. We really need to be strategic, because education comes with a particular responsibility, a particular imperative, says Giesta in 2019. And in understanding the role of education, we need to look at the whys. So why do we educate? And in here, we can have two lines of thought. We educate to continue with our societies, to conserve, to preserve, to pass on values and beliefs, a system of beliefs, or do we educate to change, to challenge the status quo, to engage critically with the status quo, and to question those values, to question those systems of beliefs? Now, there needn't be a very straight black and white answer to this, because ultimately subject knowledge is very important. But in our own classrooms, in our own evaluation systems, to which students do we award the highest marks? Are those the ones that actually tell us word by word what we told them? So do we reward just parroting? Or do we also spare a thought for the people who dare to ask an interesting question, who dare to challenge a little bit, to rattle the cage and to propose something different? Now, of course, you need the strong knowledge and the systems on which we grew up until now, because without knowing, though, how can you challenge efficiently and effectively what you have? You need to have that. But in which part of our curriculum do we have the opportunity to teach our learners how to question? Where do we stop passing on our values to start allowing them to create their own? And I think this is where global perspective comes into matter, because in global perspective, and I think these are now key words that we're looking for, global perspective looks at particularly teaching learners how to research, how to analyze, how to evaluate, how to reflect, how to communicate, and how to collaborate. These are the important 6 skills that GP is teaching our learners. And starting from as young as 5, the content of this curriculum is not, I don't know, cells like it is in biology. It is not population pyramids and the demographic transition model as it is in the geography curriculum. It is not the biosphere or the ecosystems as it is in other subjects. It is not, I don't know, square roots as it is in maths. It is to learn how to research, how to analyze, how to evaluate, and so on and so forth, those 6 of them. And as I said, they carry out from primary all the way to A-level, because we do use these skills, but we never explicitly teach these skills to our learners. Most of the time we tell them to research, but they don't really research. What they do is they go and collect information. That's a different story. That's not research. Of course, they communicate in our lessons. Of course they do, but do we teach them how to communicate effectively? And they collaborate one with the other. We tell them work in pairs, but have we ever given feedback on the kind of collaboration that happened? Have we ever asked them to stop and consider whether there was a different way in which they could have collaborated to bring about better outcomes? This is what global perspective is about. So no matter the topic that we study, our focus is on these skills. So it's a paradigm shift in what the teacher is teaching. And there are no graduates of global perspectives, like I said, these past 2 days, because nobody graduated this subject. So we're not formed in it, but we can all teach it. We can all teach it for as long as we remember that it's not subject knowledge. It is skills that we are assessing and skills that we are focusing on. So clearly the content of study is very different, because as I said earlier, if in geography I teach volcanoes, in here I teach collaboration. It's different. And it's so needing though nowadays, because we take for granted a lot of these skills. And students are no longer prepared for adult life. They're no longer prepared for going to universities just with knowledge and that's it, without being able to question it, to reflect on their own actions, to reflect on their own participation to a project, for example. So the content is exceedingly different. But if the content is different, equally the teaching and learning methods are also very different. And they're different in the fact that at the end of this IGCSE, so at the end of these 2 years of study, learners will have 3 different components, 3 different exams. And to teach them how to be able to successfully pass through these exams, they will need to give a written examination. So a written paper, and these here are the topics that are for the written paper. So these learners have to learn about demographic change. Those of you teaching geography might find this familiar. Education for all. Those of you teaching Educazione Civica might find this interesting. Employment, globalisation, law and criminality, migration. So you'll see it's a blend of topics that are of interest. But when the paper comes in front of your learners, it's not to ask them deliberately something to know by heart about globalisation or about migration. It is to look at some sources and to evaluate those sources, to evaluate the bias in a source, for example. It is to look and in those sources to try and analyze. So learners are given in the exam different source materials, and they have to prove that they've learned these 6 skills: how to research, how to analyze, how to evaluate a source. So for the written examination component 1, they need to show those skills. There's nothing to learn by heart. It is to learn the skills and then prove in the exam that you're able to apply those skills, that you have them already. And they are on these topics. Now, for the second component, learners have to do an individual report. So they have to choose a topic which is of, you can find it locally, it is of local interest, but you can also find it as a global concern. and they have to undergo the stages of research, because again, they have to prove that they can carry out a research, they can pose a research question, and then they can figure out and design tools to gather the information that they need. They can then collect the information, they can then analyze the information and then represent it in different graphs, and then they can then draw their conclusions. So this is their individual report. And the individual report, the themes that students choose, they are at their own choice, but they have to come from this list. So biodiverse in ecosystem loss, or sustainable living, or trade and aid. And I'm thinking about the colleague who teaches Agenda 2030, sustainable living, fits in like hand in glove. And for component 3, learners have to do a team project, because we also need to assess collaboration and communication, and also reflection. So in this team project, learners have to, from these topics here, that you have them here, conflict and peace, water, and so on and so forth, from these ones, learners have to choose a question, and then they have to pursue it. And they have to design a project where they would contribute to making things a bit better, or to learning about something from here. And if we have time by the end, I will show you one of these projects and how it looks like. So at Global Perspectives IGCSE, learners are assessed on their skills that can be studied through a variety of global topics, these ones here. So they are assessed on the skills, please, not on the knowledge of these topics, on the skills. Okay, so how does this happen, and how can we help them? Well, there's a wealth of resource that Cambridge puts at your disposal, and they are in the School Support Hub. And the School Support Hub is accessible to all teachers who are teachers of Cambridge schools. It is password protected, but in here you can find a lot of things. You can find the curriculum framework, which is a document about 30-something pages to 40 pages document that tells you exactly each component and how to prepare students for exam, and the assessment objectives and the topics, everything that you need to know. You also have a teacher guide. And in the teacher guide, it goes a little bit further into giving you extra help in sort of how to teach certain things, the principles of active learning, how to assess, how to use technology in your classes. You have schemes of work, and actually I'm going to see if I can go into the School Support Hub so that I can show you. Let's see, because I had it here. I wonder, you can see this? So this is the School Support Hub. Right, if just a little heads up, if you can see this.
Yeah, Mona, we can see it perfectly.
Thank you. So this is the School Support Hub, and in here you choose, thank you. In here you can choose the curriculum that you want to look at. And I've chosen here Global Perspectives. And what I look here as is syllabus and specimen material. So if I click on this, I will have the syllabus document. I will have specimen papers and mark schemes. But then if I go for the examination resources, these are all the past papers by year. So this is the November 2020 series with the mark scheme, the question paper, with the insert as well. And at the end, you will have the examiner's report, the grade threshold. So where, you know, where certain grades were taken and what was the percentages. The examiner report, which is a very important report that each principal examiner writes after the whole team, the panel of examiners have marked all the papers. They sit and they reflect and they're thinking, okay, for component 1, what was good? What advice can we give back to centers? How can we tell centers what to do to make things better? Look, I'm even going to download this to show you. So this is the written examination, paper 1, and these are the key messages. Some general comments from the examiner, and then specific for every question, what most candidates did correctly and where the most candidates got the good marks but where they didn't, what most successful candidates' responses included, but then what the least successful candidates' question responded, and then the question too. So question by question, I don't think people understand the importance of examiners' reports. This is a thick document where you can literally have examples of bias from the source, for example. So you have a lot of information, and if I then go from that to other things that you have here, these are pages over pages of different past papers. You go as back as, I don't know what year. So hundreds of papers on past papers, but you can also have teaching and learning, for example. The support that you have for teaching and learning, you have your schemes of work, and they have for different topic, one of those things, and you have the teacher guide here, like I showed you. You have the coursework handbook and guidance, a lot of guidance for the team project. You've also got information on plagiarism, because of course this is a research and we need to teach our learners research. So all of this, a learner guide also for your learners to download and to use. And you've got other further guidance as well. And in here, you have the declarations, how to introduce people and the syllabus changes and everything else. So all of this is very important when it comes to the massive amount of support that you have. And I should also mention that you have samples of the team projects and guidance documents, that you also have online learning area. And this is very important because your learners can enlist themselves and they can communicate with learners of global perspectives from all over the world and ask for ideas or pose their questions to or whatever. And you can also have a forum, and you not can, but you do have a forum for teachers. So teachers can engage, teachers of global perspectives, with teachers from all over the world. And the forum is managed by a Cambridge, very experienced staff that would answer all of your questions. There's massive amounts of support for this subject. So, okay, so what are the different teaching and learning methods? Because if I teach research, it's bound to be different from the things that we are used to teaching when we teach geography. For example, let me just give you some ideas, and I don't know, maybe some of them you use, some of them you don't. Let's look at identifying claims in a text. In a normal classroom, so many times we are used to giving our learners a text, and we are used to telling them, now get me 3 most important ideas from this text. It's a way in which they get to read and summarize and maybe analyze. I propose to you a different strategy. I propose that, you know, you give them the text and then you also give them the statements, the summaries. And then you tell them, I like you to go back to the text and highlight in the text, what is it that supports this claim? So for example, you know, when you give them a homework, say, okay, come back with a summary of this, and they've rolled their eyes back and I think, really, I'm tired of it. Well, actually make a bit of a detective work. So give them the text and the summary, 3 main ideas, but then ask them to go back and say, what is it in this text that allowed me to draw this summary? And allow them to really look for meaning, read, so that they really are able then to support that claim. And if you really want to make it complicated, introduce a red herring, an idea that is not supported in the text. See if they can find it. And then if it's not, then let them argue with you. So it's a little bit of a twist, a little bit of a different way of approaching teaching and learning in a global perspective lesson. If we look at, I don't know, maybe some of you have used Diamond 9. I'm sure you have, because it has been around for a very long time. But for me, Diamond 9 continues to be an amazing way in which our learners learn to prioritize. They learn to be flexible in their thinking. They learn to justify their thoughts. So just for the sake of explaining, in case some of you don't know, give your learners 9, but you can give them 15 cards. And out of those 15 cards with important messages, let's say if you're doing endangered species, choose factors that impact or influence of species being endangered or extinct, and ask them to prioritize and to put in a diamond 9 from the most important one, the 2 lowest, and then so on, and just prioritize and say which are the most important factors that contribute to species being endangered. And then give them to work in a group and then go about and then see how those are different. Allow them to justify their choices. Why is it, I don't know, habitat destruction the most important? Why is it human interference? Why would it be agriculture? And so on and so forth. So allow your learners and then tell them, now if you go back to your own, would you change it? Why wouldn't you? Would you stick to yours? And allow them to debate and discuss. Our learners, I'm going to move on to complex causes and consequences. Our learners are so used to seeing cause and consequence as a straight line between A and B. And we know very well that most of the time this is not the case. Most of the time there's, as I mentioned earlier, a web of factors that contribute to an event happening, but they see it like this. So I imagine that maybe instead of using an arrow, we use like this fishbone diagram, where we can tell our students to consider the causes of an event, but in a more complex way. So for example, I would probably go here and say, okay, tell me about the political factors on this side, and tell me about the economic factors in here. Tell me about the physical factors, for example, in here, and then move on and then tell me on the other side about the, I don't know, historical factors that might have contributed to an event. Give your class chances to explore those different ways in which causes they're combined to lead to an event. Okay, so other ones that are maybe important to mention. I don't know if you've used the hexagons. I loved them in my teaching career. They are just like these, like the photograph shows, some laminated, not just like this, but laminated. I used to laminate them. Laminated pieces of paper in forms of hexagon. And what our learners had to do in order to identify complex relationships between different things was to put in the middle one with the main, let's say, I don't know, increasing a sort of like elderly people, right? So an increased percentage of elderly population. And then on the one side, considering the causes of it. So let's say, you know, a decreased birth rate, increased life expectancy, and so on and so forth. But then on the other side, the ramifications, and then they have to connect, but in such a way so that if they decided to put one next to the other, there's a clear link between them. So there's a beautiful web that starts being built, and they use this as a writing framework for writing a response. There are so many different types of information. If when they are young, our learners are used to, or maybe it's sufficient to say that, you know, use between fact and opinion, and that's about it. But when they get to GCSE, maybe it's important to tell them that there are different types of information, that there's definitions, facts, opinions, value judgments, predictions, and then give them different statements and allow them to decide what type of information that is, or in their research to decide what type of information they're looking for. Those are excellent ideas that you can use in your classroom. I'm wondering also, give one, take one. I don't know if you give one, get one. If you have it in your lessons, it's whereby when they research something and they work in their groups, they have their own list of things, of facts that they found out, and then they have to go and then they have to negotiate with someone else. And they, okay, I'll give you a piece of information, but then I have to get one from you. And then then their knowledge increases from collective knowledge of all the other learners. I wonder, I'm sure there is time to look even into more complicated teaching and learning strategies, such as see, think, wonder, or the 3 Whys. Both of them, the ones at the top here, they were developed in Project Zero by Harvard, at Harvard University, in a project called Visible Thinking. And they are amazing because in a see, think, wonder, you stop the thinking process. They're used to firing very quickly, and we stop their thinking process. So we give them a photograph, let's say it's this one. And in this, or anyone that supports your teaching of a topic, this is poor or inequalities. And in this one, you tell them to first see. So tell me what you see here. I don't want you to make any judgment. I don't want you to draw any conclusions. I just want you to tell me what you see. So we discipline their thinking process so they develop their observational skills. And when they tell us what they see, everything in great detail, then we tell them, okay, so you saw this. What does it make you think of? So now it's about inferring, it's about drawing conclusion, but you can't draw conclusions unless you used your observational skills and you disciplined your mind to stop and to look carefully for everything that there is on this photograph. So it stops them and it disciplines them. And then they can draw their conclusion. So I see a dirty child. Okay, I should imagine that this is in a poor country. I see a lot of rubbish piled up at the back. Therefore, my immediate conclusion is, and they draw their conclusion. And when you finished and exhausted this, then get them to say, so what does this make you wonder? Like, for example, I wonder whether he's happy. Things that you can't really see in the photograph. I wonder if poor people can be happy. So there, you just move it further away. You move it to things that you can then really learn to explore. See, think, wonder is a great tool that I use it in geography. I use it in every subject, but more importantly in global perspectives, because it really is about visible thinking. The 3 Whys is a similar strategy whereby learners are then, after they do this, they're used to saying, okay, why is this important? And there are 3 Whys, because the first question that they have to ask themselves is, why is it important for me? It is good for the speaking test, Katerina. I think I agree with you, yes. So why is it important for me? This, I don't live there. I don't live in Bangladesh. This is from Dhaka's slums. Why is it important for me? So they have to start thinking, how is this relevant to them? And then the second why is it important for my community? So why is it important to me? Maybe it makes me feel in a way, maybe it makes me feel lucky that I don't live there. Maybe it's important for me because I learn about these people and how they live. And why is it important for my community? Do we have poor people in our community? Can we do anything about them? So they really start tapping into and getting involved and getting engaged into their own learning and into exploring all of this. And then the third why is it important for the world that we know this? And again, this develops the 3 Whys is a strategy, again, from the Project Zero. It is about developing those global competencies that Veronica Boa-Mancilla, who is working or was working with Project Zero, was mentioning about. I'm also talking about evaluation, for example. So it is very important to realize that there's more than one way of evaluating the quality of someone's reasoning. So you have to ask it if it is illogical. Many times we stop there and dismiss the argument just because it makes no sense, or we just say, well, that's not logical or that's illogical. But there are more than one way to being illogical. And I think maybe we could teach our learners to explore what it's like to be illogical and unpack this concept. For example, generalizing, you can generalize, and maybe in a situation doesn't need to be. You can use a poor facts, or you can contradict, or you can have inconsistencies in an argument, or you can beat about the bush but not really answer someone's argument. Politicians might be guilty of that. But you can also attack the arguer rather than the argument. So you can attack the person in an argument rather than what the person is saying, and that really doesn't make any sense. Or you can restrict the opinions of others without giving them arguments. All of these are ways in which learners learn to evaluate. For me, this personal to local, regional, national, international is very good perspective, because at Global Perspectives, they need to take this perspective. They need to take from a local point, personal point of view, and then grow it to a global point of view. Assessment is also different. Most of the time we're used with a summative assessment, and yes, IGCSEs are summative assessments because they give learners a grade, a final grade at the end of it. But throughout the course of studies, we mustn't rely solely on summative assessment, because ultimately summative just tells you what it's like where you're there. There's no way of going back from there. You can't improve from where you're at if all you've got is just a letter. Formative assessment, or a number. Formative assessment is what improves your learning because it is qualitative. Douglas Reeves made this beautiful analogy between formative assessment and summative assessment. And Dylan William is also amazing at this, formative assessment strategies. Douglas Reeves said this: the difference between formative assessment and summative assessment, it's like the difference between going to your doctor for a checkup and having a post-mortem. Now, if I unpack this, if I go to the doctor is going to look at me, Mona Chiriac, and is going to tell me with my medical history what I need to do to get better. I then take the doctor's advice, the teacher's advice, yes. Then I go and I get better. I do what the doctor tells me. So the student does what the teacher tells them to do. It's a personalized advice. For me, they tell me what I have to do, not the whole class as a whole, but me. So I take that advice on board, I go, I improve on it. I go back to the doctor and they say, you're fine, you got better. If I don't, I'm not gonna get better. If I go to have a post-mortem, well, it's just about it. I just find out the cause of death. It's important to know the cause of death, but there's nothing else I can do about it. So I'm not disputing the importance of summative. It tells me where I'm at the moment. But in order to get to a good point, to have a good summative assessment, I need to have a lot of formatives in between. And at the end, as I said, the component one is with the written examination. It's 1 hour and 15 minutes, as I told you, and it is questions based on a range of sources. And they will have to answer those, not to show they know the knowledge, but they can apply the skill. And then the individual report, and as I said, the team project. I think we have time for questions. Whilst you're asking your questions, either in the, I'm gonna stop here, either in the box or in the, I'll put the Mentimeter back actually, maybe you can help me a little bit, Joe.
Yeah, I'm here.
See it?
Yep. We have got some questions in the Q&A box.
You can either put the questions in the Q&A box and I will be happy to answer if I know, but equally, I wonder, now that you've heard what Global Perspectives is all about, what words come to mind after hearing more about Global Perspectives? You have a choice of you can use your own words, but you can only introduce 3 words. So I wonder if you can go to Mentimeter and
okay.
See. Let's see, I will open this one as well.
Yeah. We'll need to share the code for the new Mentimeter.
Yes. So the code is on the screen right now. Let me just share it. There you go. So 68644127. Or you can also write in the chat what words come to mind now that you have heard of Global Perspectives, whether it is for you, whether not. Okay. group work and debate, says Sylvia. And I saw Fabiola say inspiring. It is inspiring. It inspires me. Stimulating reflection and collaboration. Yeah, Angela, I wish I had studied it at school. But imagine what we can do for our students. Look at that. So imagine, yeah, a world challenge. There are a lot of schools who are absolutely taken up by this curriculum and the engagement of learners when studying global perspectives. I mean, I have to say, maybe my geography lesson is not as interesting as a global perspective lesson. It is very stimulating and it is collaborative. It is engaging, yes. Yeah. Yes, it does activate the student's brain. I agree with you, Paola. I agree with you. It is, and the important thing is that it is something that interests them. And I think even more important than this, it helps my geography lesson. If my learners know how to research, collaborate, analyze, reflect, communicate, and evaluate, it helps my geography lesson, and then it's going to help your biology lesson or your, gets them into going, yes, reasoning. Yeah, I agree, Palmina. I think I couldn't summarize it better than this is what we should be doing as educators. I'm not denying, I mean, I am a passionate geographer. I love geography and environmental management. But I need the other one to help me teach it, to help them understanding, stimulating and challenging collaboration. Yeah. Are there any questions, Josephine, whilst we...
Yeah, there are 3 questions in the Q&A box. The first one from Federica asks, do you think that using also our L1 language, so first language with beginners, is useful? Or is it better to start at once speaking English all lesson long?
I'm bilingual. So my first language is not English. We were talking about this, Joe. I'm Romanian by birth. My daughters are 6 and 11, and they are bilingual. And that's because I always celebrated them knowing 2 languages. So I never disputed the importance of knowing both. So for me, I used one to help teach the other. And we recently had a very interesting talk at Cambridge with this, where we said, there are international schools where they sanction learners if they use their mother tongue and they have to speak in English. I said, well, we need to celebrate it. And if they understand the concept in their language and they can respond back in English, the purpose is of understanding it and then developing it. And I don't think we're doing English any favors if we dismiss the native language, but the proportions need to be right. My 6-year-old, trust me, when she speaks to me, she automatically addresses me in English because I've been the one speaking in English to her, but she's very, very, very manipulative in asking in Romanian somebody else if they know that those people don't speak English. So it's a celebration. Knowing Italian and English is a celebration. Celebrate instead of, sanctioning and punishing. Yeah, I'm hoping I'm answering that question.
Yeah, I think that's sound advice. Do you know what level of English students should have to be able to tackle global perspectives?
In primary school, they start at age 5, but you have to realize they don't talk about migration at age 5. So in there, they talk about their families. So it's general broken down vocabulary at their level of understanding. So the topics, if you go to the primary curriculum of global perspectives, the topics are about animals, are about what they eat, about healthy eating. So they learn how to say about fruits and vegetables, about colors, about seasons and when they grow. So it's general vocabulary at that time. So yes, they can use it as early as 5.
Yeah, and we often recommend that in high schools in Italy, especially in state schools where it's maybe not an international school, that it would be good if students have maybe a B1 level to begin. That will give them the good foundation to be able to then communicate easily and understand as well.
I can see Angela's. Do you see Angela's? I think Angela's question is really interesting. If there are any training courses, there are a lot of courses. So you can have a choice of, because of the pandemic, we are now doing online courses, but there is Global Perspective, primary, lower secondary, IGCSE and A-level online courses. For introduction courses, they take 5 weeks. So you can enlist, go for the cambridgeinternational.org, and you find there at events and training, you find the courses there. But equally, for the lower secondary, there is an online free of charge course that you can go and access on the lower secondary website. There is also courses for marking. There's also forums for teachers. So there's a lot of training opportunities, and I appreciate we don't always know how to teach these skills. There's textbooks that you can go. There are on the Cambridge website, the endorsed materials.
Absolutely. I think there's one last question I think that we've got time for, and it was referring to examples of activities which worked well in your classes to put everything you've been saying into practice. But I think you've given us quite a lot of examples of activities as well. Yeah,
I've tried to use that. For me, what worked really well was the Diamond 9 were beautifully, the Get One, Give One worked beautifully. The Hexagons, because they're laminated and they can write on them, and I can wipe them off and they can use them again. So they were very useful and they worked well.
Yeah. I think that's all we've got time for, because that's our hour has finished. It's come to an end very quickly. Thank you so much, Mona. That was a really interesting workshop, very interactive, and I think it's got everyone thinking about the different activities they can do in classrooms to teach these skills. It's a lot of thought-provoking for them. So thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. Looking forward to seeing you all again next year. Please remember about getting in touch with Cambridge about the different certificate. You'll get your email for the certificate. We'll make the recordings available on the YouTube channel as well. So look out for those emails to give you that information. Thanks again for joining us.
Massive thank you for everyone who's taken time to be here with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mona. Bye. Everyone.